A flashlight suddenly clattered to the floor, and Mary immediately spun the light away. Thank goodness her reflexes were quick enough that the kidnappers didn't spot her. But then another kidnapper sensed something was off and flicked on all the lights before walking over to check the foot of the bed. Mary squeezed her eyes shut and curled up into a tight ball, too terrified to imagine what would happen next. Fortunately, the kidnappers' attention was completely focused on the bed, where their boss lay sprawled out. It turned out that the moment they'd burst into the house, Mary's boyfriend had heard the commotion and immediately grabbed a baseball bat, rushing out to confront them. Caught off guard, the kidnappers' leader had taken a vicious hit and tumbled down the stairs, where shattered glass pierced right through his body. Now he was bleeding heavily. Mary knew in her heart that her boyfriend was probably in serious trouble too. At this thought, tears began to well up in her eyes, but she quickly realized that tears hitting the floor would make noise, so she forced herself to hold them back. Just when Mary was almost ready to give up hope, a turning point appeared. The kidnappers were sent off to clean up the blood, leaving only Mike to watch over the boss. Seeing their leader writhing in agony, Mike was about to search online for pain relief methods when he accidentally knocked Mary's backpack to the floor. When she spotted her iPhone 17 inside, Mary felt a surge of hope. While Mike was completely absorbed at the computer, she carefully picked up a wooden stick and tried to hook the backpack toward herself. But the stick was too thick on one end, and despite trying for a full 2 hours, she couldn't manage it. Seeing that Mike was still glued to his computer screen, Mary took a deep breath and risked poking her head out from under the bed. After confirming she hadn't been spotted, she grew bolder and slowly reached out to grab the backpack. But just as she was about to drag it back to safety, the boss's hand suddenly slipped and fell. Mike spun around at the sound, but luckily Mary had already pulled back under the bed. Though she'd successfully gotten the backpack, she was so shaken that she didn't dare move a muscle. It wasn't until someone came upstairs to talk with Mike that Mary carefully pulled out her phone and frantically started typing a distress message. But halfway through, her iPhone 17 died from a drained battery. Her one lifeline to survival had just vanished into thin air. Mary had originally snuck over to see her boyfriend just to discuss grabbing some KFC together, never expecting to find herself in such deadly danger. If her reflexes hadn't been so sharp, she probably would have been killed by the kidnappers already. But then, 2 kidnappers slowly approached the bedside. Turns out Mike had found a solution. By propping up one end of the bed, the wound would stop bleeding. He had his companions bring over some books to place under the bed frame. With discovery looming, Mary had no choice but to close her eyes and wait for death to come.
1, 2, 3.
Wait there. The wife. She's a doctor.
Mary froze in place. She hadn't expected anyone else in the house to still be alive. 3 minutes later, her boyfriend's mother was dragged upstairs. The kidnappers ordered her to help stop the boss's bleeding immediately, but the mother seemed to already know Mary was hiding under the bed. She deliberately dropped her watch on the floor and pretended to crouch down to pick it up. Sure enough, both women spotted each other under the bed. Even though the mother disapproved of her son's relationship with Mary, right now she could only count on Mary to save the entire family. Looking for an opportunity, she deliberately slowed down her movements. By dawn, she was slowly pulling the glass shards from the boss's body. The excruciating pain left him gasping for breath. The kidnappers didn't notice the slight smile playing at the corners of the mother's mouth. She was doing this to make the boss bleed out faster. Once he was completely dead, she hoped Mary could use the chance to escape. Afterward, the mother was dragged back to another room and tied to the bed again with her son. Meanwhile, the father was dressed up neatly. The kidnappers even thoughtfully helped him with his tie before dragging him to their car. They planned to use the father's identity as a bank manager to rob the biggest local bank. As the car pulled away, only Mike and the boss remained in the house. With Mike out of the room and everything quiet on the bed, Mary couldn't wait to seize her chance to escape. But the moment she poked her head out to look around, Mike suddenly returned. Fortunately, he didn't spot her. The conversation that followed filled Mary with absolute terror. Mike was holding a can of gasoline, planning to burn down both the people and the house once his accomplices returned from robbing the bank, leaving no trace behind. Mary was horrified. She realized she couldn't keep hiding forever, but she was just one woman, and charging out would be suicide. While she was figuring out her next move, a toy alarm clock happened to get kicked under the bed. Staring at the clock, Mary had a flash of inspiration and came up with a bold plan. She set the alarm for 1 hour and 30 minutes later, then quietly moved toward the foot of the bed. When she reached Mike's feet, she waited for the right moment and tossed the clock into the corner. As the countdown approached, Mary crouched under the bed with her hands clenched tight. The next moment, the alarm went off and immediately caught the kidnapper's attention. She seized the opportunity to quickly crawl out from under the bed and successfully escape the room. Mary was panting hard, barely able to believe she'd actually gotten away. After steadying her nerves a bit, she carefully inched her way toward the staircase. Once she confirmed no one was downstairs, she picked up the pace and headed for the door. But just as she was about to open it, the door handle suddenly moved. Through the peephole, she saw an unfamiliar man and, thinking he must be another kidnapper, panicked and retreated upstairs. In her frantic state, she felt around in a drawer and found a pair of scissors, then hid in the bathroom. She had no way of knowing this man was actually the next-door neighbor. The neighbor, sensing something was wrong, walked into the house to check things out, but encountered Mike on the second floor. Before the neighbor could even ask what was going on, Mike knocked him down with a club. As the neighbor's screams gradually faded, Mary completely broke down, too terrified to imagine what fate would await her if she fell into Mike's hands. She rushed to the window, trying to escape through there, but then realized Mike was heading straight for the bathroom. The instant Mike approached, Mary quickly ducked into the shower. Meanwhile, Mike was looking at himself in the mirror when he suddenly pulled out a knife. He did it with a lighter to 300 degrees, then gritted his teeth and pressed the red-hot blade against his own arm. It turns out that every time he killed someone, he had to leave a brand on his own body. At that moment in the bathroom, Mary had been holding this position for over 3 hours. The prolonged grip had turned her right hand white, and her toes could barely hold up anymore, but she didn't dare move an inch because Mike was right there. Thankfully, Mike left to patrol. Only then did she breathe a sigh of relief and carefully climb down. She opened the window, ready to escape, when she heard a scream from inside the house. Thinking of her boyfriend still in the kidnapper's hands, Mary made up her mind and chose a bold course of action to save her boyfriend. She searched throughout the house for any sign of her boyfriend, but was accidentally discovered by Mike. To shake him off, Mary jogged into the bedroom, then leaped up into the attic, which also woke up the unconscious boss. By the time Mike arrived, Mary had already sealed the entrance with a wooden crate and stuffed heavy books all around it. After finishing this, Mary began calling for help out the window. But her boyfriend's house was a standalone villa, and no matter how loudly she shouted, no one could hear her. Meanwhile, Mike calmly brought up a ladder and tools from downstairs. Hearing Mary's cries for help only made him more excited. Two minutes later, a large hole had been drilled through the wooden boards. It wouldn't be long before Mike climbed up into the attic. But just when Mary was at her most desperate, she unexpectedly discovered a crossbow hidden in the attic. But fate was cruel. She searched everywhere but couldn't find any arrows, and even got cut by the crossbow in the process. Just then, the wooden crate over the hole was violently shoved aside, and Mike climbed up with an evil grin. He shined his flashlight around, quickly zeroing in on Mary's location, then pulled away the red cloth with a twisted smile, only to discover it was just a dummy. The next moment, Mary seized her chance and dropped down from the ceiling beam. Before Mike could react, she'd already jumped down from the attic and jammed the hole shut with a stick, trapping Mike no matter how furious he got. However, the moment she landed, the kidnapper boss was waiting at the door with a weapon. Luckily, the boss had principles. He only wanted money and wouldn't hurt people, so he let her go. Mary immediately ran to the bedroom and hurriedly untied her boyfriend and his mother. But when the mother saw the neighbor's corpse, she couldn't help but scream. Before they could even leave the room, they were caught red-handed by the kidnappers outside. Fortunately, Mary reacted quickly and hid behind the wall, going undetected. At that moment, two kidnappers heard Mike's cries for help and rushed to free him. They then discussed how to catch Mary, not realizing she was standing right outside the wall, hearing everything clearly. After confirming the bedroom was empty, Mary jumped back inside and found an arrow in the bag. She couldn't wait to climb the stairs, and the moment the kidnappers entered the house, she successfully made it to the attic. Fortunately, the kidnappers didn't notice her presence, but unfortunately, the kidnappers turned around and grabbed gas cans, starting to splash fuel everywhere, clearly planning to burn down the entire room. Mary knew she couldn't keep retreating. She had to fight back. She pulled the crossbow string tight, and the sharp sound made the kidnapper realize the danger, but it was too late. This was Mary's first time killing someone, and she stood there stunned, filled with fear. However, the kidnapper wasn't completely dead yet, and with his last bit of strength, he lit his lighter. Flames spread quickly, and Mary immediately jumped down from the attic. She then grabbed a bicycle and smashed through the glass, bursting out just moments before the explosion. But the massive noise alerted nearby kidnappers. Mary reacted swiftly, circling behind them and taking out the threat with her crossbow. But while she was changing clothes, she suddenly heard calls for help coming from inside a car. When she looked, it was her boyfriend's father. The kidnappers had once impersonated him using his bank manager identity to rob the largest local bank.
Over here.
They're gonna kill you. Run.
But the father didn't rush to escape. Instead, he sat there deep in thought. Mary didn't think much of it. She put on one of the robber's masks and knocked on the window, signaling for Mike to come out. Mike thought it was his accomplice and walked out of the room. But the moment he appeared, Mary aimed her gun at him, though the bullet missed any vital spots. Mike immediately turned and fled back into the house, with Mary in hot pursuit. Soon, Mike was cornered. His boss was slumped on the stairs, fate unknown. Mike realized the situation was beyond saving and could only sit on the ground and accept his fate. Just then, her boyfriend's father walked in. Mary was about to shoot when the father knocked her to the ground with a tool. It turned out he'd been in cahoots with the robbers all along, pretending to be a victim so he could escape suspicion afterward. Mike immediately raised his weapon to finish off Mary for good. But a gunshot rang out, and it was Mike who fell. The boss had used his dying breath to stop him. Mary quickly grabbed the weapon and aimed it at her boyfriend's father. The father kept arguing that he was innocent, but Mary didn't believe him at all. Just as she was about to pull the trigger, her boyfriend's mother walked out and pulled the trigger without hesitation. After it was all over, the mother finally let go of her reservations and accepted this smart and brave girl. They loaded the stolen money into the BMW and drove away from this nightmare of a place.